Well, Toni Gattone fell in love with gardening in her grandfather's backyard in Chicago. But it wasn't until she moved to Northern California that her passion began to bloom. As a sales executive in corporate America for 17 years, she sold presentation skills training and served as a board member of our NSA, which is how I met Toni Gattone. But after the Loma Prieta earthquake, and she was working downtown, she decided this was a good time to start her own manufacturer's rep business. And she sold gifts and garden and home products to retailers throughout the West Coast. Very successful. But Toni also did something else. She achieved the high level, and it's a very difficult rank to get, of master gardener. So she started speaking on her own love of gardening, and she has an amazing garden here in Larkspur. But all of a sudden, chronic back pain got in her way. So in learning how to adapt, she began doing the research and reading what was being said about aging and back pain, et cetera. And she developed a seminar called Adapted Gardening. Well, in order to focus on her real encore business and next love, speaking and writing, Toni closed her manufacturer's rep business. And here's the result, those of you who talk about goals. Her book, The Lifelong Gardener, Gardening with Ease and Joy at Any Age, is now available on Amazon, in your local bookstores, and on her website. So I'd like you to welcome my friend, author, speaker, master gardener, and fellow Chicagoan, Toni Gattone.
Thank you so much, Susan. What a joy it is to be with you all today. And thank you, Susan, for the opportunity to meet with everybody here. You know, would you be shocked to know this, that there are 73 million baby boomers that have become seniors? That's 10,000 a day that are going into retirement. And that number has only gone up because of the pandemic. So what are all those people? What are you going to do with all this free time after you retire? Well, if the pandemic taught us anything, millions of people jumped in to create their garden. And I'm here to tell you today that, yes, jump in. If that's what you want to do, you want to start growing your own food to, take up for all of the rising costs of food at the grocery store that we're seeing every day. I just want to have you step back first and take a look at, if you're going to create your first garden, how to create it. So not just for this year's garden, but for all of your future gardens. And that is literally what brought me to this stage. And I have to say, what is adaptive gardening? It's a funny term. And the way I look at it is that it's a three-part harmony. In other words, when you're going to be putting together a garden, I want you to think about it in three different ways. The first of which is your body. What can you do to protect your body? If you're aging, things happen to our bodies. I mean, we all know aging is not for sissies. So what can you do to protect your body so that you don't end up so sore the next day that you get discouraged? And then also, what can you do to your garden? How can you modify your garden so that it works for you, so it's totally comfortable for you, no matter what happens in your future? And then last but not least are the tools. I know for a fact that gardeners love their tools. So I'm going to present to you today some ideas of, maybe you've got some tools at home, your favorite tools that just don't work for you anymore. They're just not as comfortable. Maybe you've got decreased muscle strength in your hands. And then I'll share with you some tools that are on the market that you can look forward to purchasing on your own. So adaptive gardening, I mean, who benefits by adaptive gardening? Well, really anybody that loves to garden, and it could be the children of seniors who love to garden, and maybe they've just been held back. Their body keeps saying, no, can't do that anymore. But it's also like this photograph is my friend Heidi, who lives in Mill Valley. Heidi was my photographer for my book. And this is Heidi with her sister and her niece and her grandniece, and this intergenerational way of gardening. Everybody pitches in and does what they can do. So to me, adaptive gardening is a great way to look at creating something for everyone. But my attitude is that never give up. I mean, my chronic back pain came to me. I inherited it from my mother. What can I tell you? You know, we were like two old shoes. We got together so well, but you know, her bad back was not the best thing that she gave to me. But I had to find a way to adapt. And that's literally how I came into discovering adaptive gardening. But my whole idea is for you to be able to, when things don't work, whether it's your body isn't working anymore, you've had tragedy, loss, whatever the challenge, my whole idea is for you to be able to look at life from a more creative point of view so that you can find other ways to get things done. And I look at resilience, it's like a muscle that you can continue to exercise and create what I call bounce back ability. Because, you know, it won't, the whole idea of, you know, not having resilience is something that, you know, we have to, after COVID, we have to be able to adapt. That is what our life is all about, whether you want it or not, we have to adapt. So grow that resilience and create more bounce back ability. So this first part is about you and what you can do to adapt. And my first idea is for you to really know yourself. What has become difficult for you to do? In the case of this photograph, this is someone that used to, you know, apply mulch. I'm a firm believer in adding compost and mulch to your garden. Compost will just help to feed the soil, whereas the mulch is the picture frame around the photograph or the painting. It finishes your garden. It keeps moisture in, which is really important during these drought tolerant days that we're in these days. And then, you know, it also suppresses weeds. So, but if you can't do it, you can't pick up those bags anymore. What are you going to do? What can you change? What can you delegate is more important. So, all right, so our bodies change, right? The first thing, that most common thing that I hear about is limited mobility issues. And this could be the back, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, anything that's going to keep you from being able to get through and keep moving, which is the key to aging, is to really keep moving. The second part is for you to have good balance and a slower reaction time. And I put these two together for one reason. If either of these issues are something that you are struggling with, please do not get on a ladder with a power tool, because that will be a recipe for disaster. So please avoid that at all possible if those two issues are something that you're dealing with. The third is reduced vision and depth perception. And I have personal experience with this, in that I had to have eye surgery. And after a week, I thought, well, okay, the gas bubble had dissipated. So I thought, okay, it's time. My roses needed to be pruned. It was just this time of year. So I put on my long gauntlet gloves and grabbed my pruner and went outside. And within a minute, I realized I should not be doing that, because I almost cut off my finger. Thank God I stopped before those blades on the pruner closed, because I didn't have depth perception. And then decreased muscle strength. Now, this is something I'd be willing to guarantee that everybody here has experienced, even down to, opening up a can or, or a jar. This is one of the things that happens. We just lose that muscle strength in our hands. And that, that's something that you need to pay attention to. And later on, I'll show you a glove that can really help if indeed the muscle strength has weakened up in your hands. And then, of course, chronic arthritis. I mean, I've talked about arthritis over the years, and it wasn't until this last year that it's caught up with me. I've got it in my back, my hips, my knees. And I'll tell you, when you've got arthritis, it's pretty tough to do anything, let alone gardening. But there are ways that you can get past it. I feel like after about 4 months now, I'm out of pain. So it can be done. No guarantee it's not going to come back tomorrow, but for today, I feel good. I could get out in the garden today and it would be great. So if any of those are affecting you, this is your new normal. And you're not alone. You've got lots of other people here that if you're into gardening, you've got neighbors that have probably gone through a very similar situation. So tap into your friends and find out what they did when their bodies were treating them the way they were. My suggestion to you is before you go out to garden, warm up your body. Warm it up by doing some stretching. This is Dr. Suki Munsell. She lives in Mill Valley and she's an exercise expert. And I went to Suki when I was asked to write this book and said, can you come up with gardeners stretching exercises? And she did. There's 8 of them in my book. But if you're not into stretching, do some yoga, some Tai Chi, or put on some of your favorite music and dance for 5 minutes. The main thing you want to do is to warm up your body, move your body before you go out to garden. And then once you're out there, switch it up. In other words, my friend Alana here. Alana is in the far picture. She's raking, she's standing up, she's raking. She does that for a while. Then she's going to stop and kneel down for a while and do some weeding. Then she's going to stand up again and reach up to do some pruning of a flowering shrub. The main thing that this is demonstrating is that you don't want to use the same muscle group over and over and over again, because it's the repetitive movement that will cause pain. And then you should also make it safe. Now, this is a whole subject in itself. But before I mention about the ladder, if indeed you look at that ladder, you look at the tree and say, I'd really like to get up there and prune it, but don't get up on a ladder. It's the #1 reason why people 65 years old go over 65 years old, go to the ER, COVID aside, of course, but it's because they fell off a ladder. So buy yourself a good step stool, hopefully one that has a grab bar up on top that you can steady yourself with. And then should you have stairs, you really should have railings. And I would recommend, if you indeed have stairs. I did a consult with a woman who had 15 stairs that she had to go down to her vegetable garden. And did I mention she needed to have her knees replaced? Both of them. So while she was recuperating, she looked into it and she wanted to have a ramp put in place of those stairs. Unfortunately, she didn't have the room for it, but she did end up selling that house and buying a house and a garden that was all on one level area. So that's how you would handle that. If you do have stairs, you've either got to have railings or you got to have a ramp. And then the whole idea of your hardscape, I can't go into this with the time that we have today, but there's so much that can be done with the hardscape in your garden. The main thing you want to do is to eliminate any kind of tripping hazards. And if you have ground cover in between flagstone, for example, that is a tripping hazard all in itself. I know, because that's what I've got out here in my garden. And during drought times, those ground covers are going to dry up, and then you've got gaping holes in between. All right, so part 2 is going to be about your garden and what you can do to modify it. The first thing is that everybody knows what a raised bed is, and most people put in a raised bed on the ground. And I just have to say, that's what I did the first time. And then my back went out again. And my husband needed a knee replacement. So when we were both able, we disassembled that raised bed, which was really a hassle. And we put in this elevated raised bed. Now, ideally, this is the first one that we bought, and it has sunk down a little bit. Future ones that we had purchased are much higher, because you don't want to have to bend over. So you want them to be waist high if at all possible. You want to have it 12 inches deep, and a minimum 12 inches deep, and a maximum of 4 feet wide. You're going to find when you put in elevated raised beds, you're going to have less pests all the way around, and your body is going to be very thankful that you don't have to bend over, that you don't have to get down on your knees in order to tend and harvest your garden. And the great news is that, they have raised beds for everyone, inclusive, thank goodness, of people in wheelchairs. Wheelchair accessible elevated raised beds are a boon to anyone who has to have a chair to get around. This is, I think, is a great idea, this raised bed on the right here, because then you could go in and work 3 different sides of it. If it were me, I would I wouldn't have this, mulch here in the middle. I would put in something, some kind of a hard surface, so that I could sit down on a chair and kind of wheel around as needed. But other than that, I think it's a great idea. And it's also got the screening on top in order to keep animals out. Now this, I have to say, I just recently, about a year ago, I got a self-watering planter. And this, to me, is the greatest thing since sliced bread, because if you can see this is a cutout. On the bottom of this planter is a reservoir. And at each reservoir, there's 2 reservoirs. One here, oops, excuse me, let me go back. One here, and then one on the back side. So there are 2 reservoirs. Each one holds 5 gallons of water. That's 10 gallons of water. And there is a device here. There's a tube with a white flotation stick. And I can look outside of my office. And if that stick is up, I know that there's still enough water in there. If I can't see the stick, I need to put more water in. You think about having 10 gallons of water in a 2x4 raised bed. That lasts a long time. So this is, and I suggest to people to think about gardening up. It's a great way to help your body, not having to always get down. The one on the right is called a gutter garden. And this was designed, a friend of mine did this, and she painted them all royal blue, which I think is fabulous. And, they're just gutters. Now, if you're gonna do this, you wanna have brand new gutters. And the PVC kind of gutters are definitely the way to go. You just drill holes in them, plant your shallow based lettuces, salad greens, things like that. And you're going to have salads every day, all year long. And then this over here is a wall planter. This happens to be from my garden, where I have a succulent planter in my south-facing garden that is very happy. And it's really a fun way to be able to stand up, to plant, to tend, and to water a garden such as this. If you live in an apartment or condominium or assisted living for that matter, you can get railing planters. Now this one has been designed for the wooden planter railings, but they also have them if you have a narrower railing as well, a metal railing. So you just put them on. This one happens to be self-watering. So you get soil, you get plants, and you have beauty and or food, whatever you want, instantly. You can also have a window box. My window box faces east, so it gets morning sun. And I have grown salad greens and lettuces and had my granddaughter come over, and I showed her how to pick the lettuce for salad that night. And she was, she was totally stoked to be able to help out. And then of course, garden up with any kind of pergolas. It's a great way to be able to stand back and watch what you're doing. If you have a containers, bigger is better, most definitely. You want to have a minimum depth of 12 inches again. And you always want to buy a planter that's taller than it is wide. You've probably seen those gorgeous low bowls, and they're great, but first of all, they dry out too quickly. So you want to have one that's taller than wide. And then you want to, if you're going to be buying planters or going to a garage sale, I got some gorgeous Italian terracotta pots at a garage sale, somebody that was moving across country. And all of them are wider at the top than they are at the bottom. And the reason for this is that at some point in the future, if you want to transplant, you can take the plant out without breaking the pot. It's a detail, right? But the most important thing that you have to do is you have to have drainage, no matter what kind of a planter you have. This one, for example, is an old toolbox that this woman, Susan Morrison, planted in. She didn't plant right directly in it. She actually has pots within it. But you can repurpose anything to be a container as long as there is good drainage. All right, part 3. This is all about the tools that I suggest that you might want to look into. So I hear from people, gosh, I just did a blog and a newsletter last week, and I had several people write to me because they're going blind, and how do you keep gardening when you've got macular degeneration? Her vision is definitely impaired. And so there are some simple things that you can do that can help. First of all, you can plant fragrance that can help you to guide you through the garden, which is always quite lovely. But you can also just, I took an old trowel and I dug, drilled holes in at the inch mark so that if you were going to be planting bulbs, you would be able to feel how deep those bulbs are going to be planted. And here is a great product that I heard about. I presented to a woman's group, and this woman in Mill Valley said that she was remodeling her garden, and she had hired some guys that she did not know to help her to do the heavy lifting. And at the end of the first day, she realized that some of her tools kind of disappeared. So she went to her local hardware store and bought this product called Plasti Dip. And she went home and dipped all the handles of her tools in pink. And guess what? She never lost another tool. But so it's like a rubberized material that, first of all, adds color. I suggest using either red or yellow. But whatever works, whatever your favorite color is. What you don't want to get is green, and because you don't. The problem is whether you're visually impaired or not. Oftentimes, and this has happened to me several times, where I was out there working using a couple of different tools, and then I would gather up the debris and inadvertently throw away a tool. So if the handles are color, it's going to be less of a chance that that's actually going to be happening to you. If indeed you're having issues with your back, you can't bend over, this is a real simple way to adapt. And it's a matter of going to Home Depot or Lowe's and having a piece of PVC cut, from your waist down to the ground. And you use that PVC, like in the upper right-hand corner, to make a furrow in the ground. And then you go over and you drop a seed down the PVC, move it a few inches and plant, drop another seed, move it a few inches and drop another seed. So you can literally plant all of your garden, and then you go back, of course, with the PVC and cover these seeds up and water them in. But it's a great way to plant a garden without having to bend over. So the number one tool that I recommend that is to buy the very best pruner you could possibly afford, because it's the number one tool that you're going to use more than any other tool. I tend to like Felco pruners. I also like Corona. I have, a couple of different pruners that I use on a regular basis. But I can't advise you as to what is the best tool for you, because it depends on your hand. They have pruners for lefties, for righties, for small hands, for large hands. What I do recommend is that when you go shopping, is to ask the retailer to let you hold that tool in your hand, take it out of the packaging, hold it in your hand so you can determine if it's going to be comfortable or not. I do suggest supporting our local stores rather than buying Amazon, but hey, whatever works for you. I've got an Amazon shop set up. If you don't want to go out to the store, or you go out shopping and then you buy it on my Amazon store, whatever works for you. Then the other thing that I want you to know about is this. This is a fabulous tool sharpener, that if you're going to take the time and the money to buy a really good pruner, take the time to sharpen them. This is a fabulous tool to use because it's got a softer kind of what they call an eco grip. It's got a guard, so you're not going to hurt yourself when you're sharpening with it. And it's got two different grits, so that for sharpening and then also for polishing. And I love it. It's by the Ironwood Tool Company. And then I want to demonstrate this because this is your standard trowel that, everybody's got one of these in their garage or tool shed. This is good, but this is better. The reason being, it's just, first of all, it's got a larger head, so it's going to be easier to, transfer soil. You can use it for drilling, for making holes in the ground, cutting roots, and even opening up bags of soil or compost or mulch. This is my number 2 tool that I always have with me when I'm in the garden. And this is something that I recommend to literally everyone. It's a reversible kneeler bench. Hey, the thing about gardening is that it brings you so much joy that you kind of forget about time. Wouldn't it be nice to have one of these close by that you can sit down next to what you're planting? And then when you need to get down, you just turn it upside down. It's reversible. So you can kneel down on it and then push on those legs so that you can get up again. It's a detail. But it's something we all struggle with, is that sometimes the getting up is the hard part, right? And then last but not least, this is, I've used a lot of hand creams over the years, but gardening can be hard on the hands. And I found this Awakening product. It's by a company over in East Bay, in Canyon, over in East Bay. And I love it because it's a magnesium-based product. and it's vegan, and it's got potassium and rose hips and ginger and cinnamon. And I keep this on my desk. I have them in my bathrooms, in my car, and of course in my tool shed, because it's a great way to protect your hands when you're going to be working in the garden, and especially afterwards. It's very nourishing and very moisturizing, and it sinks in right away, so it's not greasy in the least bit. And then 2 kinds of gloves that I recommend. This is by Fox Gloves, and this is called their grip. And it's great because it has these little drip dots on it, so that, again, like I mentioned about the decreased muscle strength, these grip dots will help you to hang on to a tool. And I like these long ones because they go all the way up to your elbow. So it keeps your, it protects you if you run into any poison ivy or anything else out there. And then these are my gauntlets. I mean, I adore this glove. It's faux leather, so you can throw it in the washing machine at the end of the day. It's got really, really great padding. And on every garden glove, the first thing that breaks through is right here, the tip. And this was designed by a master gardener, so it's got extra material that goes over the tip of every finger. And this is what you want to put on when you're going to be working with roses, berries, lemon trees, whatever. This is going to be the best way to go for you. So with that, I wanted to share with you my book, The Lifelong Gardener, Garden with Ease and Joy at Any Age. It was a complete labor of love for me, and I designed it to help people like you who want to garden, and yet you're experiencing the march of time, or you're experiencing physical issues that may be holding you back from doing everything that you want to do. So I'd like to suggest that we stay in touch. I put out a blog and a newsletter every month. I'd love for you to sign up for my email. And here is my Amazon shop address. And let's stay in touch. So with that, I want to close and just say you can adapt today so that you can be a lifelong gardener yourself. And then that way you can garden with ease and joy for the rest of your life. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Toni. This was wonderful. I think I like the reverse knee bench the most, to be honest. But I'm going to ask you a question, and that is, it's the Chicago question. I'm going to start and say, you said your grandfather's backyard. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I was thinking, were there trees? Was it succulents? Tell us what about your grandfather's backyard that started you on this journey? And then I'm going to open it up to questions from our members.
Well, Grandpa had, it was a meticulous backyard. It was, he primarily had a vegetable garden, roses, and a lawn that was so amazing. It was like you could see individual leaves in his lawn. I mean, it was meticulous. He adored his garden, and he had to give up his garden because of vision issues. And that was really, really hard for him. But that's kind of where it started for me. I thought, wow, I never saw a black spot on his roses. His roses were always perfect. And I think of him so often when I go out into my garden and I've got diseases. It's like, Grandpa, help me.
I think Grandpa would be very proud of what you've done. And I'm just going to give a plug. With Valentine's Day coming up, your book is the perfect gift for men or women who love to garden. And I think we're going to say the fallacy is the people that I know that are the rose growers are all men. So it's definitely both genders, and it's a great book. And just raise your hand. You don't have to go to the chat thing. If you have a question, would you raise your hand about gardening? And we will have, yes. Bill, start us off.
Good morning, Tony. Great presentation. Thank you for the
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for the cornucopia of gardening information. We're over here by the Scott Valley Swim and Tennis Club. Been here since '76, and it had a organic garden, operation in the backyard, all raised beds, all drip irrigation, and it's obviously organic. We visit the stables over there occasionally, for our compost. I got a big compost drum. Anyway, we raise all kinds of, fruits and vegetables back there. And, just a comment about physical fitness. I mean, next week I'll be 80, so I got to be careful about this old aging 1942 Chevy chassis, right? So what my approach has always been to physical fitness has always been, I don't go to the gym or I don't work out, to become Arnold Schwarzenegger and compete in matches and things like that. My fitness program is graduated according to my age, but is targeted towards the things I like to do, like, for instance, backcountry skiing, and hiking, and even we've some ocean kayaking, that sort of thing. Anyway, outdoor activities. That's and of course, gardening. Yesterday, as I think I mentioned at the beginning, I spent half a day out there preparing the soil because the weather's been so great. So getting everything ready for the planting season. But I just wanted to ask you a question. For about 5 years, I've been waiting for the little, what is it called? A Bartlett pear tree that someone gave my wife 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We planted it on the deck. Everything's south facing, nothing. My bird dog, that's another thing we do is hunt pheasants. So we got to fit for that. My bird dog every morning would go out there and see if it was ripe. It one pear. So I said, well, it's unhappy. So let me plant it in the backyard proper so it can have better drainage. That was 5 years ago. It's healthy, but it's not producing any fruit. So I thought, well, maybe I could buy some, it's a Bartlett, so I could buy some scions. Maybe the problem is pollination, and go ahead and graft those on. I was successful some years ago with a Fuji apple tree doing some grafting, so I know how to do it. But now my question for you is this. It's a Bartlett. Claire said,
we need to get to the question quickly.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I'm not trying to ramble here, but the question is, if I was able to get some, she wanted chemise or Bartlett scions, would that be compatible with chemise or d'Anjou scions? Would that be compatible with a Bartlett?
Bill, I have to say up front, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Okay, I really don't. I will say that several years ago, I purchased an apple tree that is espalier. In other words, it's up against a fence, and it's espalier so that it comes up this way and goes out. There are 6 different kinds of apples that are growing.
Okay, that kind of answers my question.
On this espalier apple tree, and it took 4 years. Okay. But now we're getting all these great apples. So.
And will you bake us an apple pie with 6 different apples? That is the question.
Yeah, the problem is I don't cook. So.
Okay, and Janice, oh no, I think you're a genius. That works for me. Janice, ask us a question. Ask Toni a question.
Toni, I'm so happy to see you. Thank you so much for coming. Some of you don't know that I met Toni back in the 80s in my prior NSA days. I have so many things to say, but I'm going to try to hone it down very tightly to give us the people a chance. First of all, as a certified fitness instructor, I love that you showed the one slide where you were showing 3 different body positions. You can put on your gripper gloves and do certain functional fitness exercises to promote gardening, squats, overhead lifts with light weights, more reps, lighter weights.
Yes.
And keeping posture in mind, not hunching over, which is what stresses the lower back, but keeping shoulders back and squeezing the core. So I really, really encourage people to remember to support their back as they're gardening and to throw in a few squats. My husband has a worm bin used with our table scraps to create his own little, he fashioned his own little recycle bin. You didn't talk much about recycling.
No,
I'm just curious if you have that as well.
I absolutely do. I mean, you can only do so much in a 30-minute
Yes,
presentation.
I know.
So I was really trying to get down to what's the real core message that I can deliver. I mean, you know, that in itself is a whole nother subject, Janice.
Yeah,
And I'm happy to talk to you
wait.
offline.
Let me say this, buy her book.
Yes, I
There we
will.
go.
I am
Any
going
other
to-
questions?
I'm going to.
Did I see, Mr. Pritchard, did I see you raise your hand?
Just a compliment. I loved it. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Toni,
Yes, Claudette.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Is there someone in San Francisco that you could recommend that would help me redesign my garden out on my deck that would incorporate a lot of the features that you talked about?
Not offhand. I'm sorry to say. I would, you know, I'd let your fingers do the walking, and to put in, you know, garden designers, San Francisco County, or reach out to your local master gardener branch to see if they can recommend someone to you. But it's, you know, especially with COVID, I don't know who's doing what these days. Everybody has shifted gears. But, you know, I'm sure that you can you'd be able to find somebody that could help.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
we're at 8:40 and Claudette had a question, so you would raise your hand. So Claudette, if you'll unmute.
Mine is really quick, Susan. I didn't get her contact information. She went through that screen so fast. If she could redisplay it before she leaves, that would be great.
Sure.
Yeah, perfect. Or put it in the chat.
It
That would
is
be
in the
great.
chat, Claudette. It is in the chat. It's tonigattone.com.
Thank you.
Toni, just as an FYI, because Claudette came in after you dropped that chat, you did that in the very beginning, and anyone who joins after you share that, they don't see it.
Okay,
So if
great.
you can just drop that whole thing in there, because I think you might have had it copied, that would be so awesome.
Okay.
Okay. And anyone, I'm looking on screens, any other questions? Patricia, you usually have a question, and we go back with Toni also to the 80s.
I know, it's so exciting to see Toni in her new role. It's wonderful. You might be interested to know I do socialize with Bert Decker and Drew Scott here in Vegas.
Oh my God.
All I can say is I have two gardens I love. And of course I have gardeners. I do pull up weeds in Las Vegas. All I would like to comment is that knowing how precious and important gardens are to so many, you are really doing a good service helping people healthily do it when their bodies are more frail. So I say thumbs up, brilliant presentation, and
Thank you.
beautifully visual as well.
Thank you so much. I mean, yes, it's true. Gardening has so many benefits. I mean, the physical benefits of bending and moving can help with balance, can help to increase your mobility. If you do it consciously, that's the thing. You can't, you know, I used to go out and I would garden, you know, days in a row. And then on Monday morning, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. So if you're conscious about it, and you know, what I find is that it's good not only for the body, but for the mind. It's a perfect antidote for the news and for COVID. I mean, what safer place have you got than your own little garden? But emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and even financially, just from the standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, with the prices going up at the store all the time, grow your own food. You know, there are so many websites. If somebody really wants to know how to get started, I can I focus in on not so much plants as much as how to plant. Again, consciously, when to plant. But then I look at it from the standpoint of, I can refer you. I've got resources that I can refer you to. If you need the help of putting in a garden, let me know. Happy to help.
And I love the idea of growing your own food. I had Christmas dinner with friends, and it was the best crab salad ever because of the lettuce, and they grew it. And this is a word I've heard. Maybe you could talk about it. Hydroponic gardening.
Yeah, that's growing in water. And it's there's a whole system. If any of you are engineers, that's a great way to go about doing your gardening. I get as far as self-watering planters, and that's about it for me. But yeah, that's a whole system of growing food. That's fabulous.
Okay. Any other questions? And I want to make sure that I don't miss anybody. Well, I will. Oh, yes, I can see. There you are. Ellen.
You're muted, Alan.
Ellen, you're muted.
There. Actually, Toni, this is a question that my wife has, and she wants to know how often should you repot plants?
Oh, good question. I usually suggest every maybe 2 or 3 years.
I can't hear you.
My audio is on.
Your
Yes.
audio
I
is
hear
fine.
There must be something on your side, Alan. I hear it.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was on my side. So what was the answer?
So I do it every 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Typically once a year, I will try to lift a plant if possible, and to add new soil in underneath, as well as at a minimum just on top, add some new compost or soil.
Okay.
And then I always put mulch on the top as well to, maintain the moisture. Every couple of years, I will switch out the soil, because the soil in a container it's going to get dead after a while. It's going to get dry. And so it's important to constantly be refreshing the soil. Yeah.
And I have one more comment. You talk about the financial aspect of some gardening and saving money.
Sure.
This summer, I planted a little weed, and by the fall, it was about 4 feet tall, and I harvested it, and I'm saving hundreds of dollars on weed now that I don't have to go to dispensaries for.
Good to know.
It was a $13 plant, and I'm telling you, I'm saving $400, $500, $600 probably.
Oh, that's
I don't
great.
know why, but that makes me think that's a smoking hot addition to the Cargo Lives Club.
That's right.
Any other questions? Toni, I want to thank you. I never gardened, but I'm an indoor gardener, and you have given me so much food for thought. I want to thank you. Buy her book. If you have questions, you can email her, Toni Gattone. And I would say we describe each other as she is the Italian Susan Rowan, and no, excuse me, and I am the Jewish Toni Gattone. So that's how we our Chicago thing. Thank you.
My
May
mom,
your garden grow, your book sell, and Toni is available for hire to speak to your other groups, and you can just contact her, and she will dig deep.
yeah.
So join me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. And I just want to say, think about it. What, as Patricia mentioned when she first came on, what are you going to prune out? What are you going to weed out of your life if it was a garden? And what new seeds are you going to plant? This is the time of year to think about your garden and your life. And I just so appreciate the opportunity to have spent this time with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, everybody.
If you order my book on my website, I will personalize it and ship it out to you in a matter of just a couple days.
We'll do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tony. That was fantastic. It's so good to see you.
Thank you so
Lovely
much.
to see you, Anastasia.
Very nice. Thank you.
I'm going to
See
go ahead
you
and
all
end the
next
record.
week.
I'm going to go ahead and end the recording then. And thank you, Tony.